Anthony Grassi here for College.town at the 2026 NCAA Convention. Happy to sit down with Claremont-Mudd-Scripps Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Recreation, Erica Perkins Jasper. Erica, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we sit here right now, you were in the middle of year 7. What change this academic year are you most excited about within your athletic department?
Ooh, I wouldn't say change.
Okay.
I would just say, I had an interesting starting in 2019
Yes.
in that I was maybe 6 months in, pandemic hit. So I really didn't have fully built the relationships, whether it was coaches, staff, on our campuses, et cetera. And so that was an interesting start. And so sometimes I feel like I'm brand new and maybe in year 4 or 5. But I think for us, we've done a pretty systematic job of creating structures and systems so then our coaches and all of us can really focus in on building the relationships with each other and also with our student athletes. And so I've seen moments this year of a lot of that work coming to fruition, and I think that's exciting for us because at the end of the day, I feel like my job is to help provide the best and easiest environment for our coaches to do what they do best. And when I see that starting to happen, it really makes me smile.
What were some of the structures and systems that have made that difference that you've put into place?
I think our department was really, really successful before I got there, so I'll take no credit for any continued success. But a lot of the work, I think, fell on the shoulders of the head coaches on the administrative side, whether it was compliance, game day management, even a little bit sports information communications. And so when I arrived, I think we had some really good folks in place. And since then, I think we've made some really good hires of folks overseeing those functional areas, strength and conditioning, sports medicine. And so we're starting to fire on all cylinders, where then the coaches can really step back and put a little more focus on actually working with their athletes, which I think with today's challenges that our athletes are facing, the more that our coaches can pour into them, both on an interpersonal level and then an actual coaching and development model, the better we can be.
And most of that, I imagine, was in a dual capacity where somebody's serving as, a field hockey coach and director of compliance. They were serving kind of two things.
I think a little bit of kind of the original Division III model where
Right.
a lot of coaches had administrative jobs, but also I think just coaches taking on the burden of things. And even I think investing in some technology, and this is not a plug, but working with someone like a Teamworks on the compliance and roster management, facility management side, and taking some of the time-consuming parts that maybe coaches and other staff members had to take on so we can focus on other things has been great.
Is there as you think through what the future looks like from a structure standpoint, is there maybe for your department specifically, the optimal structure is what?
Oh, I think we're a little bit unique.
Clearly, yes.
It's the statement of the year, right? And I think your structure depends on who your leadership is, who your coaches are, what your campus is like. And so for us with 3 institutions where I would say the student experience is very much of high value and the student affairs teams do an amazing job. As an athletics department, it's an example of we don't have to do as much in that space because our students are really getting that on their respective campuses. We may have to do more work than others in bringing them together and under the kind of CMS collective, but that's an area that we don't have to augment, which I think maybe other athletic departments have to think more in that space. On the academic side, all of our students who coming in are fantastic students. There's a lot of support really from the faculty in helping our students, so we don't have to maybe invest in much on that side in academic services or those kind of things. And so we can put a lot of our structures really do support, I would say, the day-to-day operations of an athletics department in that making sure we do a great job in the sports medicine space, providing those folks resources, especially I think today we know a lot more about mental health, and our sports medicine team has done a great job, I think, taking the lead of being a great resource for our students and getting them to the right folks on our campuses or in the community to get support there. Strength and conditioning, another great support service that really helps out our coaches and student athletes. So making sure that we have the right folks there who are skilled and really great working with our student athletes. And then it's the nuts and bolts and administrative stuff that tend not to be that sexy, but are super, super important, whether it be compliance, which is everybody's best friend. But I think if you're doing compliance really well, your compliance staff are probably great assets to your coaching staff, so we really put the focus on that. I think sports information and communication, most of our student athletes and families and recruits and folks and even alumni, they're getting their information from social media. So are we doing a great job in that space? Obviously in the SCIAC, we're in year 2 of our FloSports agreement, so making sure we're doing a nice job broadcasting so our families and alumni can actually watch our student athletes compete. And then just game day management. My background was a tennis coach, and tennis coaches in general tend to be control freaks, but we would run our whole game day operations from the scoreboard to getting things set up. And so little ways that our team can take some of that, the time constraints that coaches often feel pre-game and post-game, to make it a smooth experience, and then to also make it a great student engagement experience, a great experience for alumni who come back, parents, families, etc.
In year 2, that flow deal, as you mentioned, I'm curious what the reception has been, what the impact maybe on the ultimate exposure for your athletic department has been.
Well, I think collectively for the conference, it has positioned us really well in that there is an absolute standard that everybody has to meet or exceed. Our director of communications, Jeremy Niffen, is a total all-star, and he was really going above and beyond, I think, well before we had the flow deal on how we streamed everything, and we really tried to stream everything. But I think the fact that when our student athletes go on the road and SCIAC play, and you know that the broadcast is going to be exceptionally high quality, when folks come in, play and compete at CMS, their families, they know they're going to get a great broadcast out of it. I think that piece has been really important, kind of that consistency across the SCIAC brand.
Have you seen, obviously, people in general, the pushback has always been about the cost of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious from a maybe numbers standpoint what the impact on viewership is, because we've seen more leagues go with flow behind a pay or behind a paywall, I should say. The drop off in viewership, has normally been has varied, I guess, in its significance.
Well,
put it that
and
way.
it's a little bit apples and oranges in that. And look, this is well out over my skis because I'm not an expert in this space, right? But if you're tracking viewership by everybody who logs in, if something's free, right, lots of people will log in, but the average time is 10
the
seconds,
retention.
right?
Yeah.
So I think, from talking a lot to our commissioner and some of the conversations in the AD room, we've been really happy with, I think, viewership numbers, and also the fact that people are logging in and watching, an entire contest and whatnot. I have young children. They're 14 and almost 12. And the realization that kind of the paid streaming model even exists through Game Changer and some of those apps at the youth sports level, I think the price point for families coming in has not been as shocking. I think it was really challenging for our families who had particularly been at CMS, where maybe we were going above and beyond with our broadcast to begin with. And so I think the initial pushback was, well, you're broadcasting our basketball game the same way you always have. Why would I want to pay more for that? That was probably where we experienced more of the pushback. I think new families were like, oh, this is actually a hot deal. This is a lot better than dad's iPhone set up on a stand at the high school game, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as it's gone on, I also think we made an investment when the SCIAC went with Flow to hire an additional person to really oversee the broadcast space and kind of any of our video, social media. And I think the upgrade across all of that on the CMS side, a lot of our families and our student athletes have felt it's been worthwhile. I think the one challenge that I don't know if we didn't anticipate, but that we've had to address is when it was free, our student athletes, say if their friends had a road game, at Occidental, they would just tune in and watch from their dorm rooms. And we didn't anticipate maybe students going, oh gosh, I want to be able to log in. So we've tried to do a good job. We've got a big TV in the lobby of Roberts Pavilion where we have a FloSports subscription where we can show for any students who want to come watch road games during the year. So that's been pretty fun because, Saturday night we host a men's basketball game. Usually our women's team is on the road somewhere else. We can have the women's game on in the lobby and on the TVs, and then our men's team can play right there. But that's probably the one that I didn't anticipate, and we've had to probably pivot more than expected.
We'll get back to CMS specific.
Yes.
As you mentioned, you were a little over your skis. That's perfectly fine. I appreciate all those insights.
There you go.
As you are serving in an athletic department that serves 3 separate institutions, I'm curious the relationship building that you have to do and continue to do, how maybe different or unique is that? Given that, just a few weeks ago, as we sit here now, Claremont has a new president, or announced a new president,
Yeah.
I should say. How different or unique is it to serve all those different entities and the collaboration between all 3 to help provide the best student-athlete experience?
Yeah, so I think when things are going really well on the day-to-day, whether it's our student athletes, our coaches, or if you were to walk into the athletic department, you might not know immediately that we serve students from 3 different colleges. On the administrative side, particularly in my chair, sometimes the job just requires 3 times as much of whatever X may be. So sometimes, if there's some information we have to share, I might be sending 3 emails or having 3 separate meetings. Or if there's been an issue or a crisis or a challenge within the department or on campus, it often makes sense for me to have either 3 separate meetings because each campus has its own identity and its own challenges, or one kind of larger co-branded discussion if we're trying to solve a problem together. So the administrative side, I'll be really honest, especially maybe when issues come up, it might be 3 times as many meetings, 3 times as many conversations. The flip side is when things go well, and I'm at an incredible place where lots of things go well quite often, whether it's in the classroom or in the community or on the actual fields of play, we do get to often celebrate 3 times as often. When we hosted the men's water polo national championships and we came home with the title, one of our presidents was actually able to be there, and it's fun to then be able to get to email or text the other 2 presidents like, hey, we won the national championship, like, here are your student athletes, and then seeing those emails from those presidents go out, those are the fun moments. So sometimes when I'm feeling maybe the administrative burden of doing things 3 times over, I have to remind myself that I usually get to celebrate 3 times too. So,
As you mentioned, obviously, all 3 institutions are very highly academically prestigious.
yeah.
I'm always curious at institutions like that, how you can or have leaned on, to put it lightly, the intelligence that exists within the community, all 3 institutions should say, but even within the student body, to help bring the athletic department forward, where you're in you have a lot of technologically advanced individuals, you have a lot of different specialties across the different institutions. How does that help serve the athletic department as a whole?
I've never been asked that question, but that's a great one. That is one of the really amazing benefits. So in my role where I chair the physical education department and our coaches, our faculty members, part of our jobs are actually attending faculty meetings and being part of the faculty. So again, back to the whole 3 times as many things, I will go each month to 3 different faculty meetings. The benefit is I get to sit in on 3 different faculty meetings and kind of hear the issues that institutionally folks are facing, better make connections with individual faculty members who may be doing interesting things that, may directly or indirectly intersect with what we're doing here. A lot of our campuses really pride themselves on leadership and the leaders that they are churning out of their respective institutions, yet all 3 institutions have very different kind of philosophies on the how and why they do things. And so one, I think it provides me with really great insight on how to interact with our different students because they are at different institutions, but I do have 3 times as many resources across the board. And same goes for intersecting with student affairs folks. I tend to think the folks in student affairs, what they do is really similar to what we do on the athletic administration side. And so to be able to pull from the best practices of what folks are doing on our campuses makes my life a lot easier.
How have the different leadership philosophies of each of those institutions impacted how both you lead and you think about managing the athletic department?
Maybe not at all, and quite a bit.
Altogether?
I think it probably doesn't impact like my style and how I go
Okay.
about things, but I do feel a tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility to do an incredible job because of the high level that our institutions go about serving our students and producing kind of great contributors to society. So, yeah, I take that responsibility very seriously, and I think it probably impacts me in that way and motivates myself and the rest of our staff to do a fantastic job and to also find ways where how we go about things at CMS really feel like a fit, whether it's a Scripps student, whether it's a CMC student, a Harvey Mudd student, et cetera.
Let's out of this last question. You've described your leadership style as a leading from the bench, which, given your tennis background, makes a ton of sense. But I'm curious what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, I think I'm not the leader who's going to walk up to the front of the room and make some impassioned motivational speech and everyone's going to run out and be able to win the game. I wasn't that coach when I was a tennis coach. I really based my philosophy and style around building relationships with those that I was, honored to lead, and really thinking about leading folks is building great partnership with them. So I do a lot better with one-on-one conversations. I try to spend a lot of time on a weekly basis getting some kind of conversation or catch up with all of our staff, whether it's our head coaches or our directors in specific functional areas, just seeing what's going on, whether it's personally or professionally, being a great resource. And then I think the second part is I think when I'm doing my job really well, those who are working with me view me as an excellent resource to help them execute their job better. And so those one-on-one interactions become exceptionally important because that's when some of the better support and problem solving really happens.
Given that your strength is in those one-on-one conversations, I'm curious what you've developed from a skill standpoint as a leader in that group leadership capacity. Because obviously, you at one point in time in your career, you were leading an entire tennis team. You had previous roles in tennis as an organization. How has that developed over time?
I think it has developed in that you obviously have to work on the things that both you're strong at and that you'd like to get better at, much like as a tennis player, right? I had a great forehand. I had somewhat of a sketchy backhand. So one, I had to always work on my forehand as the weapon. But two, I couldn't fully neglect my backhand. I had to make it serviceable and slightly better on the off chance I had to hit it in a point. And I think in everything we do, it's the same type of philosophy. So I know I tend to be better in those one-on-one interactions and serving folks in that capacity and building the relationship. And so making sure I stay true to that on the daily basis with those relationships, because this job can be tiring and exhausting and you can get caught up in kind of the administrative minutia of things, which can distract you from what you do well. And so I think keeping the focus on what I do well and how I feel like I can best serve the folks that I'm leading. But then it's also taking some chances and getting uncomfortable with things that you may not be good at. So I know I'm not a great listener. I'm a great talker. So I try to really work on being a better listener, just working on those soft skills on how you best work with and lead all people, because I know I'm not for everyone. And so trying to make myself more for everyone. And then also putting me in those situations that I'm not comfortable in. As I said, I've never been one to get up in front of the room and galvanize folks. And so you're not going to be hearing motivational speeches from me, but putting myself out there up front in times, really preparing so I can represent CMS and our institutions well is some ways that I try to challenge myself and continue to get better.
Excellent. Erica, thank you so much for the insights
Thank
today.
you.
I take time for sitting down with you.
Thank you very much.